good to see you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
What do you think's going on here? You explain to us and to the viewers this lawsuit and what happened.
This is a massive win for American consumers, really worldwide consumers, because Google is a trillion-dollar big tech monopolist. They have gatekeeping power over information and commerce in this country, and they use that power to crush competition, shutter small businesses, and cancel conservatives and others with whom they disagree. And this lawsuit was started under President Trump, the Trump administration, but I do want to commend President Biden and his Justice Department on this, because I think the only thing that President Biden has gotten right is continuing President Trump's antitrust law enforcement against these big tech monopolists, trillion-dollar big tech monopolists.
That's just it. Cancel conservatives. That's at the crux of this whole thing. And we just had a recent example of this from Elon Musk. He actually brought this up that on Google searches, here's what he wrote. He wrote, wow, Google has a search ban on President Donald Trump. Everyone remembers this. This happened about last week, that if you typed in President Donald Trump, you'd get President Donald Reagan or something weird like that. This has been going on for years, and thank God finally it's being called out now.
Yeah, I mean, Google controls about 95% of online search. Microsoft spent like $5 billion to try to compete with Google with something called Bing. Have you ever heard of Bing? If you haven't, Google it.
I mean,
that's how big Google has gotten. And I would say this: if Google competed against YouTube instead of acquired YouTube, it would be much less likely that Google would be destroying the free market.
Mike, I'm going to switch gears and talk about the Supreme Court. We know you clerked for Justice Neil Gorsuch, and we have a soundbite from him talking about these crazy proposals from Joe Biden to rearrange the Supreme Court as we know it here. Let's bring it up.
In a democracy, you're in the driver's seat. You're the sovereign. Those famous three first words of the Constitution empower you. Do you really want me deciding everything for you? The place that unelected judges have in a democracy. An independent judiciary, our founders fought a revolution for it because they knew what it was like to have a judiciary that was responsive to the crown, to a whimsical king. And they didn't want that for this country.
They didn't want that at all, the founders of our country. But the way Democrats want to go with this is they do want the Supreme Court to go with the crowd and just implement and exit and have this code of ethics here, the slippery slope this creates, Mike.
Yeah, Justice Gorsuch, my former boss, released his new book today called Overruled. You should go buy it. Let's make it a New York Times bestseller. And Justice Gorsuch understands the dangers of destroying the federal judiciary, the independence of the federal judiciary. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris tried to bankrupt Trump, throw him in prison for the rest of his life, and throw him off the ballot. And when they failed, they tried to defund his secrets or underfund his Secret Service detail. And when that failed, they're trying to destroy the legitimacy of the Supreme Court that got in their way.
I don't see an end in sight for this. It's so scary that this process has begun. If people think it's going to end, if Biden, they say it'll never happen, but crazier things have gone down in this country. Hate to see it. Mike Davis, thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, coming up, it's time to reassess our view of Kamala Harris, right? We've had a pretty